It was the opening they needed. The next day, the diner was closed for maintenance, but it was really a war council. Armed with a chalkboard and a renewed sense of purpose, they laid out their strategy. They weren't going to become slick and corporate, they were going to become more themselves than ever before. Their counteroffensive was Mel's Diner Community Appreciation Weekend. Tommy, finally given the green light, launched a surprisingly effective social media campaign, posting vintage photos of the diner and heartfelt testimonials from the staff. Elliot helped them get a small write-up in the local paper's community section. The weekend was a spectacular success. They didn't offer discounts, they offered connection. Mel brought back his legendary once-a-year barbecue brisket, a recipe his father had taught him. Vera, the official ambassador of charm, greeted every customer at the door. Jolene ran the floor with the precision of a drill sergeant, her booming laugh echoing through the packed room. And Alice, for one set each afternoon, stood by the jukebox with a microphone and sang, her soulful voice filling the diner with a magic no franchise could ever replicate. The regulars came back in droves, bringing their friends and families. New customers drawn in by the buzz discovered the quirky charm they'd been missing. It wasn't about the food, not really. It was about the feeling. It was about being in a place where your story mattered, where the owner might yell at you, but he also remembered that you hated onions. The Golden Pancake continued to thrive across the street. Mel's Diner didn't win the war because it had never been a war they could win on those terms. Instead, they had won something more important. They had reminded their town and themselves of their own value. As they cleaned up late Sunday night, exhausted but exhilarated, the diner was filled with a warm, triumphant energy. They were survivors. They were a landmark. They were a family. And that was a recipe no corporate chain could ever hope to duplicate. Chapter 10, The Empty Room. The victory over the Golden Pancake left the staff of Mel's Diner with a renewed sense of purpose. They had stared into the abyss of corporate mediocrity and fought their way back, not by changing who they were, but by embracing it. The diner was more than a business. It was a landmark, a community, a home. This newfound confidence radiated from the staff, creating a warm, bustling energy that even Mel's perpetual grumbling couldn't extinguish. It was into this atmosphere of comfortable triumph that Tommy walked one sunny afternoon, clutching a thick envelope and wearing a smile so wide it threatened to split his face. He had been thriving at the local community college, his earlier academic anxieties replaced by a genuine passion for his communications classes. He'd found his footing, and now it seemed he was ready to fly. "Mom, you are not going to believe this," he said, waving the envelope. "I got it. I actually got it." Got what Honey Alice asked, pouring him a celebratory glass of iced tea. The summer journalism internship at the Village Voice, he announced, his voice buzzing with the pure, uncut joy of a dream realized. In New York City, 3 months, Mom. An apartment in Greenwich Village, a press pass. They're even paying me a stipend. It's everything I've ever wanted. For a split second, Alice's heart soared with his. A fierce, brilliant pride washed over her. This was it. This was the culmination of all the years of sacrifice, of working double shifts, of helping with homework at the diner counter after closing. Her son, her brilliant, wonderful son, had earned a chance to chase his dream in the biggest city in the world. Then a second wave hit her, a cold, powerful undertow of pure panic. New York City, 3 months. An entire summer thousands of miles away. The city felt like another planet, a chaotic, dangerous world away from the sun-baked familiarity of Phoenix. The pride was still there, but it was now tangled with a thick, suffocating vine of fear. She forced her smile to stay in place. "Tommy, that's wonderful." She said, her voice a little too bright. "I'm so proud of you." Tommy, lost in his own excitement, didn't notice her slight tremor. The rest of the diner erupted in congratulations. Vera hugged him tearfully. Jolene gave him a solid pat on the back and a list of greasy spoon diners in Manhattan she remembered from her trucking days. Mel, in a shocking display of approval, grunted, "New York, huh? Good chili dogs there." Don't let him swindle you. But as the initial excitement faded in the coming days, the reality of Tommy's departure began to settle in, and the cracks in Alice's supportive facade began to show. Her life for nearly 2 decades had revolved around the son of her son. His schedule, his needs, his triumphs, his heartbreaks, they were the landmarks by which she navigated her own existence. The prospect of that sun moving to a different galaxy left her feeling adrift unmoored. Her anxiety manifested as a relentless, smothering form of helpfulness. She began compiling lists, emergency contacts, subway maps, detailed instructions on how to separate laundry. She bought him a heavy wool sweater. It gets chilly on the coast. You never know. A family-sized first aid kit and enough non-perishable food to survive a small apocalypse. Mom, it's an internship, not an expedition to the Antarctic, Tommy said gently one evening, surveying the mountain of supplies growing in the living room. They have drugstores in New York. It's better to be safe than sorry, she insisted, folding the wool sweater for the third time. Her friends saw her struggle. Vera would listen patiently as Alice fretted, offering hugs and comforting platitudes. But it was Jolene who offered the perspective she needed most. Alice, look at me, she said one day, cornering her in the diner storeroom. I left home when I was 17 with nothing but a beat-up pickup truck and a bad attitude. My mama thought the world was going to eat me alive, and maybe it tried a few times. But I learned to bite back. You raised a good kid. You taught him how to be smart, how to be kind. You have to trust that you did your job right. Him leaving isn't him leaving you. It's proof that you gave him wings. Alice knew Jolene was right, but her heart refused to listen to her head. The tension between her and Tommy grew a quiet, loving friction. He was pulling away eager and ready for his new life, and she was holding on, terrified of the space he would leave behind. The breaking point came the night before his flight. Alice was attempting to fit a fourth pair of sensible shoes into his already overstuffed suitcase. "Mom, stop Tommy," said his voice tight with frustration. "I can't fit anything else in here. I can pack my own bag." "I'm just trying to make sure you have everything you need," she retorted, her voice trembling. "I don't need 5 kinds of indigestion medicine," he exclaimed, his patience finally snapping. "I need you to trust me. You have to let me go and do this myself." "I'm your mother. It's my job to worry," she cried, the words bursting out of her. "What if you get lost? What if you get sick? What if you need me, and I'm 2,000 miles away?" The anger between them dissipated as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by the raw, vulnerable truth. They weren't fighting about shoes or medicine. They were fighting about love and fear and the painful, beautiful process of letting go. Later that night, as they sat in the quiet living room, the packed suitcase standing by the door like an ominous monument, Alice finally confessed her deepest fear. "It's not that I don't think you can handle it, honey," she said, her voice thick with unshed tears. "I know you can. I'm afraid that you won't need me anymore. That I'll just be the person you call on holidays." Tommy moved from his chair to sit beside her on the couch, taking her hand. "Mom, that's never going to happen," he said, his young face serious and sincere. "It doesn't matter if I'm in New York or on the moon. You're my mom, you're home, that doesn't change. Me needing you a little less right now just means you did a really good job." The drive to the airport the next morning was quiet, but it was a comfortable silence filled with unspoken understanding. At the gate, they hugged for a long time. "Call me when you land," she said, her voice choked. "I will," he promised. "I love you, Mom." "I love you more," she whispered. She stood at the window, watching as his plane taxied down the runway and lifted into the vast blue sky, a silver bird carrying her whole world away. She drove home in a daze, the car feeling too big, too empty. She let herself into the apartment, and the silence was absolute. Tommy's room with its neatly made bed and bare desk was no longer just a room. It was a space, a tangible representation of her new reality. For a moment, she allowed the grief to wash over her. An era of her life was over, but as she stood in the doorway of the empty room, another feeling began to surface, faint at first, then stronger. It wasn't emptiness she was feeling, it was openness. Her life, for so long defined by the single, powerful title of Tommy's mom, was now hers to redefine. She thought of her friends, of her singing of the Diner family that had saved itself through sheer force of will. Her story wasn't over. A new chapter was just beginning. She walked out of Tommy's room, closing the door softly behind her, and picked up the phone. "Jolene," she said, a smile slowly forming on her face. "Are you and Vera busy tonight? I was thinking it's been way too long since we had a proper girls' night out." Chapter 11, the second act. Alice's first girls' night out in the post-Tommy era was a revelation. Free from the gravitational pull of maternal responsibility, she, Vera, and Jolene rediscovered a lighter, more carefree version of their friendship. They talked not about household chores or diner gossip, but about hopes, fears, and the vast uncharted territory of the future. As the night ended, walking under a canopy of desert stars, Alice felt a spark ignite within her, the same spark she'd felt on the stage of the Sonoran Sounds Festival. Tommy was off writing his first chapter. It was time for her to start her second. The opportunity presented itself a week later, pinned to the diner's crowded community corkboard right next to an ad for a lost cat and a flyer for a local car wash. The Blue Cactus Lounge, the notice read, seeks vocalist for weekly Thursday night slot. Professionalism a must. The Blue Cactus was a world away from Mel's. It was a dimly lit, sophisticated establishment with plush leather booths, a real stage, and a clientele that didn't consider chili a cocktail appetizer. It was the kind of place people went to listen, not just to eat. The thought of performing there was both thrilling and utterly terrifying. "You have to do it," Jolene said, poking the ad with a decisive finger. "This isn't a county fair, Alice. This is a real gig." "Oh, I don't know." Alice demurred, her stomach fluttering with a familiar mix of desire and dread. "They probably want someone younger, someone with more experience." "Experience," Vera chimed in, her eyes shining with faith. "Alice, you've got more experience in your little finger than most people have in their whole lives. You don't just sing the songs, you've lived them. That's what makes you so good." Buoyed by their conviction, she made the call. The audition was set for the following Tuesday. She practiced relentlessly, her small apartment filled with the sounds of her voice growing stronger and more confident. Yet when she walked into the Blue Cactus, a wave of imposter syndrome washed over her. The club owner, a woman named Brenda with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, watched her with an unnerving, unreadable expression. The house band was professional tight and seemed profoundly bored. Alice chose a bluesy, heartfelt ballad, a song of resilience and quiet strength. She closed her eyes and sang, not to the intimidating owner or the stoic musicians, but to the memory of every struggle and every small victory that had led her to this moment. When she finished, the silence in the empty club was absolute. Brenda took a long, slow drag from her cigarette. "You're a little rough around the edges," she said, her voice a gravelly baritone. "You're not a pop star. You're a waitress." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. "But you've got soul. People will believe you. You start next Thursday. Don't be late." And just like that, Alice Hyatt had a second job. Juggling her two lives proved to be a Herculean task. Her days were a blur of order pads, coffee pots, and Mel's incessant complaining. Her nights were a journey into a different world of microphone checks, moody lighting, and the complex unspoken language of professional musicians. She would finish her shift at the diner exhausted and smelling of fried onions and rush over to the Blue Cactus to transform into a lounge singer.